Wasn't very much traffic driving home, but that didn't stop my furry backseat driver from intently watching the road through the windshield and giving a sharp meow when I made a left-hand turn he seemingly didn't approve of. Finally, I pulled into the driveway, got out of the SUV, and walked around to the passenger side to grab my bag and the bottles. Elvis jumped out the moment I opened the car door. He headed up the walkway to the front door as I wrestled with the tote full of milk bottles, which had somehow gotten wedged under the edge of the seat. It didn't want to move. I gave a groan of frustration. I didn't want to pull too hard and break something, but I didn't want to have to carry the bottles inside one by one either.
"Hello, Sarah,"
a voice said behind me.
"Is there a problem with your car seat?"
I straightened up and turned around. My elderly neighbor, Tom Harris, was standing by the back bumper of the SUV, a frown creasing his forehead. He was a small, round man, no taller than 5'8" or so, with thick iron-gray hair and small black frame glasses that gave him the stereotypical appearance of a college professor. "Hi, Tom," I said, brushing my bangs back off my face. "No, it's not the seat. I brought home a bag of glass milk bottles. I set it on the floor, and now the darn thing's stuck. I don't want to pull too hard because I don't want to break them."
"May I take a look?"
he asked. His voice still held a trace of his Scots accent, even though he'd lived in Maine for more than 50 years now. "Absolutely." I held up both hands and took a couple of steps backward. Tom was a particular exacting man, and I knew there was no chance that he'd break any of the bottles. The lawn around his gray-shingled story-and-a-half house was the most perfectly manicured one in North Harbor, Maine, probably in the entire state. No weeds dared poke their heads up in the 2 planters that flanked the front door and ran the length of the house on either side. Tom leaned into the truck, his head almost touching the floor mat as he peered under the seat. He slipped a hand beneath the canvas tote.
"Aha!"
I heard him say, almost under his breath. Then he backed out of the truck and handed the bag of bottles to me. "Thank you, Tom," I said. I gave a sigh of relief. "You're a lifesaver." He smiled.
"You're welcome. The strap had just gotten caught on a piece of metal on the frame of the seat."
He reached over and tapped a bottle, which was half poking out of the bag. The newspaper I'd wrapped around it had come loose. Inside it, I could see a couple of dried-out, pointed-edged leaves and several deep red wrinkled berries. I had no idea how long the bottles had been stored in the old chicken coop where I'd found them. I wondered how the leaves and berries had gotten inside. One of the chickens, maybe.
"Make sure you dispose of those very carefully, Sarah," Tom said. "Those are holly berries. Ilex opaca. They're toxic to cats, and dogs too."
I nodded. "I will." I realized then that Tom didn't have his corgi, Matilda, with him. I glanced over at his little gray-shingled house. There was no sign of her. "Where's Matilda?" I asked. "Is she all right?" He nodded.
"She's over at the Burns' house visiting Molly."
He gestured toward the house diagonally across the street.
"I'm on my way to get her."
"How is Molly?" I asked. 10 days earlier, the 5-year-old had fallen out of the maple tree in her backyard and broken her right leg.
"When I left, she had Matilda wearing a cowboy hat in preparation for painting her portrait,"
Tom said. I grinned. "I look forward to seeing that." He smiled back at me.
"As do I."
I thanked Tom again for his help, and he made his way across the street as I headed for the front door, where Elvis was waiting more or less patiently. My 1860s 2-story Victorian house was within walking distance of North Harbor's waterfront. The neighborhood, with its big trees and old houses, had felt like home from the first time I'd turned onto the street. My house had been divided into 3 apartments about 30 years earlier, and it had been let go over time. But both my dad and my brother Liam had agreed with my belief that it had good bones, and after a lot of work it had turned into the home I'd known it could be. My grandmother and her new husband, John, lived in the top-floor apartment, while Graham's friend, and mine, Rose Jackson, had the small main-floor unit. Elvis and I